Howdy. So before I left for trail, I spent a lot of time scouring YouTube videos, trying to find information about what gear to use, what works for people, what they like about it, what they don't, things like that. And what I really want to do is try to give back to the community of thru hikers. So folks that are looking at doing a thru hike for the first time, and you're looking for information, and you want to know, not only, hey, what are the specs on a piece of gear, but what did another thru hiker think about it? So that's kind of the idea with these videos. And the first one I'm going to do is on my backpack. So in 2021, when I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, I carried the Hyperlite Mountain Gear Junction 2400 pack, which is a 40-liter pack. And if you count the little side pockets and mesh pockets and stuff that I'll show you in a minute, that's an extra 9 liters. And of course, I use those, so you end up at about 49 liters overall. The pack itself weighs 31.89 ounces. I did add a couple of things to the pack. So I added this Hyperlite Mountain Gear waterproof shoulder pocket, and it just mounts directly to the shoulder strap. And inside of this, I carried my electronics. So I had my phone, I had my AirPods. Sometimes I had my battery in there if I was charging my phone while I walked. I would also have my Garmin inReach right in the front right here. And of course, I dummy corded it to myself. So if I drop it, I can't lose it. Now the inReach, just side note, the inReach does come with a little clip, and you could clip it to one of these daisy chain straps up here at the top. And a lot of people do that. I didn't like the idea of bending forward and having that swing out and maybe hit something, or when I set my pack down, I didn't want it to hit things and scratch up the screen. So I actually just added a little piece of very small shock cord. It is run through the back of the daisy chain back here onto a little clip. And then when I wasn't using it, I would just kind of wrap it around, and then I would drop that guy inside the little pouch, and it never went anywhere. And my screen still looks brand new. So really easy to get to and use the inReach, but it kept it out of the way. So I really like that little guy. That shoulder pocket itself comes in at 1.4 ounces. It is highly water resistant. I was in some pouring down rainstorms and I never got water inside of here. So if I had this zipped closed, my gear never got wet. I was never inundated. I never swam with it. I didn't fall in any lakes or rivers or anything. So I don't know if it's truly waterproof. But in the conditions I was in, including heavy rainstorms, my gear never got wet. On the right shoulder, I added a water bottle pocket. This is from Z-Packs. There's a lot of folks making these things. I don't know what makes one better than another. The things I liked about this was it has this rigid hoop at the top, so when you go to put a bottle in, it's easy to get in. You're not fighting with the mesh. It also had a little elastic strap here at the top, a little piece of shock cord that you could loop over the top of the bottle so the bottle doesn't bounce out. In normal walking conditions, I never had a problem with that. But if I was running, especially running downhill where there's a lot of bouncing, the bottle would start moving, and eventually this strap would open up and my bottle would launch out the top. So I think the shock cord at the top could have been a little more stout. I don't think it was designed for running, and for its intended purpose of hiking and walking, it's probably just fine. You could, of course, modify this. I think if I was to go out with this same pocket again, I would put a stronger piece of shock cord up here, maybe some 1/8 inch shock cord with a little loop that I could put over the top. Very easy to modify this thing however you like. I did have a couple of problems with this pouch. There's a little strap that goes around the back of your shoulder strap right here, and the side of it started to abrade, and it almost wore all the way through. This isn't critical to the pouch. It does keep it from swaying left and right when you're walking, but it does have another little attachment right here, which actually is just a little kind of girth hitch around with the toggle. That would have held it upright. It would have been okay. I could fix that. I could add a piece of string, or I could add a little strap and sew it back on there, and it would work just fine. The back side of this pocket is Dyneema. The Dyneema is very soft now, so it's been heavily used, but it maintained its integrity throughout the entirety of a thru hike. So it worked pretty well. This little guy here, Z-Packs water bottle sleeve, comes in at 0.71 ounces. So this whole system, without anything in it, just the backpack and these little pouches I've added, comes in at a total of 2.13 pounds. So a fairly light system, not ultra light. There are lighter systems out there, but it is a very light system, and I'm very satisfied with the weight of the equipment. So the pack itself, it has a kind of a sternum strap here at the top like every other pack has. It's got the little emergency whistle on there. I never use the emergency whistle. I'm sure it works fine. I did have a problem with the buckle up here, and you'll notice I still kind of have a problem with the buckle up here. I must have stepped on it or leaned on it, or I did something to it where I kind of warped the plastic in here, and it doesn't want to seat easily like it used to. So towards the end of the thru hike, I kind of had to fiddle with it a little bit, and of course you can make it work, but it used to work a lot better. So just kind of something to think about. These things do take some wear and tear. Down here at the bottom, you've got a waist strap, very easy to adjust. Clicks together in the middle. There's no fancy V's or anything, kind of where it's trying to do some kind of weird load balancing thing, or not weird, but trying to do some different load balancing thing. Very straightforward. I found it to be very comfortable. On the large pack, this waistband is large enough for me. I have a 32-inch waist. It got a little bit smaller on the trail, but I never had any issues with it being too large, and it definitely wasn't too small. So this is pretty good to only have this much strap kind of hanging down from the sides. And I liked it. It worked well. I never had any rashes or chafing on my hips. I felt like it did transfer the load pretty well to my hips. There are no load lifter straps down here at the bottom, and there's none up here at the top, right? So you don't have kind of that more featureful pack that you would get from like maybe Osprey or Gregory or North Face or one of those kind of more feature-rich packs. It's very stripped down, but I did really like it. It fits really well. The shoulder straps are fairly thin. There's not a whole lot going on up here, but I also like that. I don't like having a lot of padding up around my neck, especially when it's hot outside. It causes a lot of chafing. Things will bunch up here, and it's just more heat, more chance for heat rash. I found that the pack straps were sufficient. I carried a little over 35 pounds in this area. I think the max that I carried was about 40 pounds. That is an estimate. But I know that I routinely carry 35 pounds with a 5 to 6 day food carry with all of my base gear. So this pack will carry 35 pounds to me very comfortably. That's fairly subjective. If you have a lot of hiking history, it'll probably work just fine for you. If you've had some shoulder injuries or something like that, where you're a little more sensitive up here at the top, then maybe you might want to add some pads. There are some wider pad straps you can get up here to give you additional padding. I know Z-Packs has those. There's probably a bunch of them you can get. You can make your own. You can just simply take some foam and tape it on there. Just be careful not to get a lot of adhesive residue on the back here, because that'll be a sticky mess. So this worked pretty well for me. Also on the sides of the pack, you have these two hardline pockets. I really like these hip pockets. Even after the end of a thru hike, the zippers still work just fine. You do have a bit of a challenge getting them all the way down here at the bottom. You kind of have to hold the corner and pull it down. Not a big deal. If you're carrying trekking poles, you just end up putting them up underneath your elbow, and you kind of jam them in there, close them down. You get really used to it. It becomes second nature. You don't even think about it. I did have another hiker with me on trail who had a very similar pack from Hyperlite. They had the lighter weight fabric, but it has the same hardline pockets on the side. And his zipper on the edge right here, the hardline actually tore. So maybe it was the way he was accessing the pocket, or there was stress there as he was zipping and unzipping it. But the fabric deteriorated down, and he ended up with a hole in the hardline right here. He contacted Hyperlite customer service. I think they asked him for a picture or something like that, and then, hey, give me an address where we can ship it to, and they shipped him a whole new pack. So Hyperlite Mountain Gear's customer service, pretty good, I think. I ended up using them a little bit later, and I'll tell you about that. But yeah, they're very responsive, easy to work with. I liked them. I really like these hip pockets. They don't kind of change the shape of the hip belt, so they're small enough on the sides that they're not trying to warp it out. They are that hardline material, so as you're working through brush and whatnot, if they were some kind of mesh or more open weave, they would get hung up and they would fray a little more, but the hanging up is kind of the bigger deal. This hardline doesn't hang up, and even after a thru hike, they pretty much look brand new other than being kind of dingy. They're in great shape, so I really like that. The pack fits me well. You can see it doesn't go down too low on my backside, so I don't get any kind of bunching down here on the back. It felt really good, even in the heat. There is no air gap in the backpack here, so you don't have like an air mesh or airspeed panel like you get from Z-Packs or Osprey. But even in the heat of the desert, I really didn't mind it. So it's kind of interesting. And I come from Osprey packs, and I'm used to having that mesh back panel. I was a little bit worried about having all that surface area across my back, but it really didn't bother me that much. You do stop. Whenever I stop, I always take my pack off, set it down at my feet, and it lets my back dry out, lets the back of the backpack dry out. Just kind of take care of your gear, and it'll take care of you. I'll take the pack off and kind of show you some of the other stuff with it. It does have a haul handle here at the top, which is super handy. I cannot imagine having a backpack that doesn't have this. I use this all the time. It's something you don't really think about, but this is a nice little feature to have. I really liked it. On the front of the pack itself, you've got this large mesh pocket. Now this is the Junction pack, which means that it's got the hardline sides and it's got the mesh back. So if you wanted to get one that was all mesh or all hardline, they do have those. So they do have other packs that have full hardline across the back. I wanted to be able to have the open mesh so that I could see my gear that was back here. It makes it easier to find stuff, kind of when you're digging around, where's my things at. I also like the idea of being able to stuff stuff in here as I'm walking to sort of dry it out. And in that vein, Hyperlite also adds these little straps on the side over here with these little loops, little webbing. You could put a little webbing strap through here and add compression across the back if you wanted to. What I did with it was I added some shock cord to it with a little cord lock, and I added my own extra gear storage area. So what I would use this for is typically Fritos. So I could put a bag of chips back here and have no worry about them getting broken, so they weren't inside my pack getting smashed up. I also really like to hang my socks back here, or maybe a shirt or something I had that was wet or sweaty. If I wanted something to dry, I could just shove it in through here and I could have stuff hang out, and I could adjust the tension on it with this cord lock that I added. So I really like that. It doesn't weigh anything, super functional. I use it all the time. I would absolutely do this again on my next pack. I really like it. So on the side, the pack does have these very large side pockets. These are large enough to put 2 smart water bottles side by side in it. I actually didn't carry smart water bottles. I carried these HydroPack 2-liter bladders because they went with the filter. I was using the Ketadine Bee-Free filter. The cap right here works very well with those filters. So I had 2 of these, plus I had the 1-liter bag that came with the Ketadine, and then I also had the 750 ml drinking bottle that I had in the front, and that got me through the desert with no issues. I didn't have any problems carrying water with this bag. Other folks that had Hyperlites that used the smart waters, they would have 2 on either side with a total of 4 water bottles, and they didn't have any issues carrying that way either. There is a compression strap down here on the bottom that I use because I was using these HydroPack water bottles, but if you're putting 2 smart water bottles in here, this pocket is pretty much maxed out. So there's really no point in having that strap down there. It's just kind of there. So you just keep it snug and keep it out of the way so it doesn't hang up on stuff. There is an upper tie down strap or a compression strap up here that goes from the top of the pack down here kind of towards in the middle. I found this very useful to adjust the size of the pack. So if I wasn't carrying as much, or as my load decreased, typically because I was eating all my food in the desert, my pack would get smaller and I could tighten it up and there was no sway in the bag. Also, when I was going into town, I would tuck my trekking poles in here and they pretty much disappeared. You can see they don't even stick up from the side or the top of the bag at all on either side. It worked really well. I like the location of this strap. It worked out well for me. A third way you can compress this strap is through the actual roll top closure itself. So you can roll this top material down. This is that Dyneema 150 material, very, very strong material. I never had any issues with it. It didn't perforate in any way. And you can provide compression to the pack that way, which worked really well. The last way you can compress the pack is actually with this Y strap at the top. So this guy connects via a Fastex fastener right here, and then it goes over the top of the bag. Now you can adjust this with an adjuster back here or from the front. So you could make this really big. So like if you were carrying your bear barrel, which is what I did, you can actually make this large enough to carry your bear barrel. And because it's a Y strap, the barrel won't twist and fall out, and it worked really well. You'll notice I also have a 1/8 inch foam pad that I carried. I use this for all kinds of stuff. It was my sit pad. It was also put underneath my sleeping pad to keep it in good shape at night. And it worked out really well for my bear barrel. So when I set the barrel on the top up here, it kind of held onto the barrel. It didn't slide left and right. It didn't rotate. It didn't do any kind of weird stuff. I saw a lot of people that were constantly kind of trying to push their barrel back and forth to keep it centered. With this pack and this configuration, I had no issues at all. I didn't carry it like that without this, so I don't know how that would work out. But this is kind of grippy, so maybe that helped it out. But it was a really nice platform for the bear barrel on the top. This strap worked really well. A couple things to note with the straps on this pack. I did have some issues with the shoulder strap, and down here towards the bottom, and I don't know what caused it, but towards the end of my hike, with maybe about 3 weeks to go, I noticed that I had some fraying on the strap, and it had frayed through about 1/3 of the way. It didn't happen at any other time during the trail. I don't know what I did different at the end of the trail that caused that to happen, but the strap itself frayed through. Another place that I had fraying was here on the front of the pack. This is that strap that connects to the Y strap. Down here towards the bottom, it was catching on something. I don't know how. There's nothing back here in the way I carry, but the strap frayed back here as well. So I actually ended up contacting customer service for Hyperlite after my trek, and I sent them some pictures of the fraying, and they said, no problem, mail us the pack, we'll fix it, and they mailed it back to me. And that took about a month for that to happen. From me sending it to me getting it back was about a month, so not too bad. They pretty much just cut out the sections after the fray or before the fray, so that's all that's left was good strap, and then they bar tacked on a new piece of strap. So this is a brand new piece of webbing. That's the same solution they applied over here on the shoulder strap. But when I looked at it a little more closely, looking at the bar tack, not super high quality there. So that's one of those things where you kind of feel like I could have done a better job myself, and I couldn't because I'm not a sewing machine. But it just doesn't seem very substantial. Maybe if they had done like a box X stitch or something like that, that would have seemed a little more stout. But I think it would have got me through if that had happened during the trip. The turnaround time would have been a bit of an issue. I did really like the way that they did the gear exchange for the other hiker that had the problem with the pocket. They just sent him a whole new pack. That way he could keep using his pack as he walked forward. And then when he got to that next drop location where they shipped it, he would just shift everything over to the brand new pack. And that would have worked out well. I didn't get that option. They just offered to fix it. And maybe that was because I was done with my through hike and I had more time. So the pack does have an internal frame. So there is padding here inside the pack. And there are 2 aluminum stays that run the length of the pack. And they transfer the load from your shoulders down to your hips quite nicely. They do have a little opening in there with some Velcro tabs. You can pull those stays out if you want to. I did see a couple of folks that had done that because they were working on an ultralight solution. I don't know how well that worked for them, if it made the pack feel better or worse. But I really like them. They weigh very, very little. So I just left them in there. And I never had any problem with them. I really like that. So you can see with the way I carry my pack, everything worked out pretty well. This is a 40-liter pack. And other than my food, this has all of my gear that I actually carried on the trail. I went and dug everything out and packed my pack back up, which was actually kind of fun. So I'm going to kind of open it up and show you the inside of the pack now. And you can see how I loaded this thing. You'll notice when I open it, it makes quite a bit of noise, right? So the material itself, this is that Dyneema 150. So anytime you see a Hyperlite black backpack, it is their 150 weight fabric, which is their heavier weight fabric. If you see the white ones, that's their 50 weight fabric. So this is supposed to be more durable. It was very, very durable, but I also never saw anybody with the white backpacks that had any durability issues. They were very dirty, but they didn't have any issues with the quality of the material. Like I didn't see anybody that had perforations or anybody that was complaining about water leakage with the DCF 50 pack. So the DCF 150 might be a little bit overkill, but I also felt very confident in dragging this thing around. Like if there was a fallen tree and you were going under or over it and you're dragging your pack, I never had any concerns about it damaging my pack. The only thing I worried about was the mesh back here. The mesh did get some holes in it, and it typically would notice those most after like a hitch. So when you go to get a hitch and you're jumping in the back of a truck or a car real fast, you're throwing your gear in there. There's a lot of other backpacks with trekking poles. There's things in the car that might snag on that mesh. And then when your bag comes out the other end, you notice you got a new hole in the mesh. Mesh holes are very easy to fix. You just simply sew them up. I've got Kevlar thread in my repair kit, so very easy to fix those. But I really didn't worry about them. I don't have any small stuff back here that I was worried about falling through the mesh, so I just kind of let it be. So that kind of thing, something to think about with that mesh. Maybe you get snagged a little bit, kind of depends on the environment you're in. But for the Pacific Crest Trail, I found that it worked really well. So things to think about with the noise of this bag, when you're going into and out of camp, so if you're coming into camp late or you're leaving camp early, you want to be quiet to be courteous to the other hikers around you. So you're trying to move really slowly on all your synthetic gear so you don't wake them up because it is so incredibly quiet out there. So just something to think about with this bag. It did get a little quieter over time. When I first got it, it was very noisy. It is less noisy now, but it still does make a decent amount of noise. So here at the top of my pack, I would have my rain pants. The rain jacket itself is down here on the front of the pack in the mesh pocket. Same, I've got my water filter and the water bag that goes with it here. And then I've got my poop kit. On the side, I would have my other water bladders, 2 liters on each side, max capacity. And then if I wasn't using them, I would have my trekking poles slid into the side here as well. So in the top of the pack, the rain pants, my little med bag, which has, med bag stuff, like a little repair kit, my cooking kit, and I'll talk about these things in another video because there's probably too much to do all at once. This is my food bag. This is another Hyperlite mountain gear bag. This is called a pod. So for my food bag, I used the large pod. I never did any bear hangs, so this worked really well for me. It does have a couple of strings here on the side, but if this was very full, I'd be a little worried about these strings being stout enough to actually hang the bag. So I didn't have to do that. If you're in a place where you're going to do a lot of food bag hangs, I think I would get an actual food bag that has some strings on it that's made to hold the weight of the bag. And I would max this thing out, especially later in the trip when I was eating more, trying to stop weight loss. This would be completely full for 5 days, and then I would have stuff stacked on top of it. But it worked well. I really liked being able to zip it open, and I could see all the contents of my bag very easy. And it is shaped the same way as the backpack itself, so it's flat along the back, rounded at the front, and it fits perfectly inside of a Hyperlite backpack. I really like the pods. I got a bug net in here, which I hate. It's a great bug net, I just hate wearing them. This is a small pod, so the other one was a large pod. This is a small pod. This carries all of my clothing. And one thing about the pods is they are that Dyneema DCF fabric. I think this is DCF 50. Maybe it's lighter than that, but it is a very lightweight fabric. It is completely waterproof, the fabric itself. The seams are taped. It does have a highly water-resistant zipper. It is not completely waterproof. I think if you submerge this, your gear is going to get wet. But if it's inside your pack and your stuff's inside here, you've got 2 layers trying to keep your stuff dry. My gear never got wet. I did have water inside my pack when it was a heavy rainstorm in the Sierra, and I had set my pack down on the ground as I was trying to get my tent set up. The water that was running across the ground somehow got inside the backpack. I had water, just kind of moisture at the bottom. With the bag that was in the bottom, it was moist on the bottom, but the inside of it was wet, so that worked out really well. We have my tent. And the very bottom of the bag, this is all of my sleep gear. So this is the size of one of those large pods. So this is the same bag that I used for my food bag. So a large pod, that's what it looks like when it's fully stuffed out. So that's my sleep system. So inside the bag itself, they have a mesh pocket that runs down the back for a water bladder. So if you wanted to do an internal hydration system, you can. There's also a little hanging loop here at the top so you can hang the bladder so it doesn't crumple at the bottom. Also, they've got a hose port over here on the side. So if you wanted to run the hose out the side of the bag, you can do that. I never use a water bladder in this bag. I don't like to put water inside my pack. If those things rupture, the things that you're trying to keep dry are now going to be wet. It's also very difficult to get a water bladder in and out of a full pack. So being a 40-liter pack on a thru hike, this is going to be very full. You don't have a lot of extra room. So when you go to stop for a water refill, you pull that bladder out and you filter water into it. Now it's full and it's like this thick. Now you've got to shove that down inside that pocket, which is pretty snug to begin with. So you would end up having to take all of your gear out, shove the water bladder in there, then push all of your gear back into the bag, reroute your hose, and it's just kind of a difficult situation. I didn't see anybody with a Hyperlite mountain gear backpack on the trail that used a hydration system like that. Everybody used smart water bottles. It's pretty common. I did see hydration bladders used by other folks that had different backpacks, but they didn't last very long. So people that started with those systems, they would find it cumbersome to be fighting with it. Everybody else would be done with their water and gone. They've got all of their gear out of their bag trying to get the bladder back inside. And if you like that, that's great, but I didn't see a lot of people using it after the first couple of months. They just seemed to kind of go away. So what I ended up using that pocket for was anything that I had that I didn't want to lose on the trip. Like before the trip, my daughter had written me a note and she hid it in my stuff. When I was in San Diego getting ready for the trip, I found it. I thought, wow, that's really cool. I want to keep that and carry it with me. So I put it inside of a Ziploc bag, wrapped it up nice and tight, and then I shoved it way down here in the bottom of the inside of that mesh pocket. And then when I wanted to read it, like if I was in my tent, everything was out of my bag anyway, I could reach in, pull that thing out, look at my note, put it back, and it was always safe. I carried it the entire trip, and it was always safe. Still looks like it did the day that I found it. I also would keep my trail wallet in there and little knickknacks and things that people gave me along the way. Somebody gave me a photograph, some folks gave me some stickers, stuff like that. If anything was flat and easy, I would slide inside of there and it would be easy to get to. Early on in the trip, I had my permits in a bag in there. I didn't get checked for permits until I was way up into the Sierra, and then it was kind of cumbersome to get them out because now you got to open your pack. So maybe there's a better solution of where to keep your permit. I kept mine there because I just didn't want to lose it. I didn't want to have a problem. But it was the 2 times that I got checked for permit, it just was kind of a longer thing than what you might have liked. I actually had a Park Service volunteer complain because it was taking me so long. But I think she might have been having a bad day or life or something. I don't know. So yeah, that's the Hyperlite Mountain Gear Junction 2400 pack. I had no issues with this pack. I really liked it. On my trip, I saw a lot of other packs out there. Looking at those packs and thinking about them, are there any of them that I think I would have rather had? No, I don't think so. I really like this pack. It worked very well for me. I would be very confident using it for my next thru hike. The only thing out there that I think is even kind of remotely interesting is Hyperlite has done a new pack called the Unbound, which has a different mesh material. So I like having the mesh because it stretches and you can keep shoving stuff in there. If you have hardline, you only got so much. It's not going to stretch, right? You have a finite amount of space, but you can cheat a little bit with the stretchy stuff. So they've got a new Dyneema mesh that is stretchy, which is very interesting to me. I'm thinking it was going to be much more abrasion resistant. It probably won't be as easy to see through, but I think that might be cool. They also did an interesting thing with the seams on the Unbound pack. You can see how this is flat. On the Unbound, they flip those around so that the actual rough side or thick side of the seam is on the outside and the smooth part of the seam is on the inside, which makes it easier to seam tape, which makes the bag even more waterproof. So that sounds kind of cool. They also added a big mesh pocket, a stretch mesh, that same Dyneema mesh fabric, to the bottom of the pack. And the idea there is there's a big opening on the side here and you can shove your snacks in there or things you want to get to easy while you're walking. So if you're carrying your pack and you're walking along, you want to get a snack, you would just reach into that pouch, grab that thing out, eat your snack. And then on the other side, they had a small little slit in that same Dyneema mesh where you could put your wrappers or something back in there. So that sounds kind of interesting. I don't know how much I would like that. I saw some folks that had that in like the Palante packs, and basically the bottom of the pack ends up rounding out so that when you take your pack down and set it on the ground, this pack likes to sit upright, which sounds kind of like not a big deal, but that's super nice. So every time I set my pack down, it's not rolling over onto that mesh side and rolling down. And if you're on an uneven surface, it can actually cause your pack to roll down the mountain. So I never had any issues with that. My pack likes to stay upright. I like the way that it's designed, especially when you shove all of these bags in there. It goes together very easily. It carries very well. It became a part of me, very molded to me very quickly. Yeah, I am very happy with this pack, and I would feel confident recommending someone else to use it for any through hike. So it is very strong, very durable. Even with the fraying issues that I had, I'm sure I was doing something. I can't imagine that they frayed all on their own. That just doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I hope you found this video informative and useful. And if you are going on a through hike this year, I wish you well. I'm super stoked for you. It is a life-changing event. No regrets. Do it, do it, do it. Make it happen. Happy trails.